Huge night in the association. We were one assist away from a 50-point triple-double. Plus, LeBron James, his off night cools the Lakers' hot start, and the Cat already proving to be a bad fit with the New York Knicks. That's all ahead today on the Locked On NBA podcast.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On NBA. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Doug Branson, host of the Locked On Hornets podcast, and your Shot Clock Sherpa, your guide to the NBA's biggest stories with the help of the Locked On Podcast Network's local experts. With me are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts. As always, we've got from the Locked On Nuggets podcast and senior writer for the Action Network, Matt Moore, and from the Locked On Bulls podcast, we've got Hayes. Matt Hayes, the biggest story last night was the first 50-point game of the season, and it came to us courtesy of Paolo Banchero. What was the most impressive thing about that performance, and should we be recalibrating our ranking of Paolo amongst the young NBA stars? Matt, we'll start with you.
Okay, on that latter part, it's the Pacers. Let's slow down. It's the Pacers. Awesome game. Loved watching it. It's Indiana. We've seen this story before of everyone going off. But I love Banchero's game, and the fact that he's better this season, his jumper looks cleaner. He's scoring obviously at will. Last night's game, he's so powerful and strong. He's bullying guys getting downhill, knocking Isaiah Jackson out of the way for a powerful dunk. He's combining that strength and that power and that scoring ability, the bag that he's got, but he also passes and rebounds and defends. It's like Carmelo Anthony if you want to do the things that actually help you win. It's amazing. I think that Paolo Banchero is on track to be one of the premier stars in this league. I'm not ready to put him there yet after one game versus the Pacers, but we'll look back on this as hey, remember when he dropped 50 on the Pacers? That was when I knew that Paolo Banchero was going to reach the summit.
Yeah, I love to see this game from Paolo, him using his quickness, his combination of speed and strength, and he seemed like a poised player out there. He knew what he wanted to do every single time he had the ball in his hands, and he understood mismatches. And when he got into that rhythm, it was just great to see that nobody could stop him on that court. And so it was good. Also with 9 assists, 13 rebounds, it was just a good all-around game from Paolo Banchero. Yeah, it was against the Pacers, and you got to take that into consideration. But just the way that he went about it, we knew that this season, coming into this, for the Orlando Magic to take the next step, somebody was going to have to take a leap offensively, and hopefully that continues to be Paolo Banchero, because with Franz Wagner going out with illness, it was just good to see Paolo step up big time.
Can everyone score 50 against the Pacers? That still seems impressive to me. I mean, if he scores 35 against the Pacers, yeah, that's not, but okay, 50.
If they went out the night before, Doug, you could score 50 on the Pacers.
Well, you haven't seen how wet my jumper is. All right, let's talk to Philip Rossman-Reich of the Locked On Magic podcast. He had a front row seat to that performance, and what impressed him the most about Paolo's big night.
What the Magic needed. And that's what makes him special. Frankly, the 50 points were great. They were mesmerizing. They were awe-inspiring. Passing that ball to Jalen Suggs in that moment, that's what impressed me. That's how I know this kid is special. It's not about him. It's about the team. Because this 50-point game would have meant nothing if the Magic didn't win. And that's how Paolo felt. That's what he delivered on this day. A huge win for the Magic with major potential implications for the playoffs down the road. Excellent job and excellent victory.
All right, powerful statement there from Philip Rossman-Reich. How about the Magic? 3-1 start, a team that when we were first starting this podcast, we had a topic about if they were reshaping the league by just focusing solely on defense and eschewing shooting, but they have the 4th best defense according to Cleaning the Glass by points per possession. Are you ready to add the Magic to your list of teams who are a threat to make the Eastern Conference Finals, Hayes?
No, not yet. They got to do it way more consistently. I'm glad for the 3-1 start. They have a great defense. That defense is something that could very well be a determining factor in the playoff series and things like that. But I got to see him sustain it. I got to see it for more time. It's still early in the season, and teams are still trying to figure out their balance and things like that. I got to see a lot more before I'm willing to say that they can make a noise in the Eastern Conference personally.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing here is that I think they're on pace to improve from a regular season standpoint, right? And I'm not saying that that's nothing, because it's steps for a young team like this. You go from being a fringe playoff team to making it into the first round to being competitive with the Cavs in that first round, going to game 7. You take the jump next year and maybe you wind up with 50 wins and you're actually in that top 4 and you have a real chance and you're on track for the trajectory. Don't rush it. Don't skip steps. Don't take steps backwards. That's the really hard part. The problem is just like, they can get off to this really hot start, and it's still not going to change the fact that we're going to feel like Boston and the Sixers at full strength and Milwaukee and all these other teams are still going to, maybe not Milwaukee, all these other teams are going to be able to beat them in their first round series. But I will say, based off of that, how they played versus the Cavs, I have a little bit of upside that maybe I'll upgrade them to like, hey, maybe they make like a surprise run and they get to the second round deep, or they make a conference finals if the bracket falls right. Like, they're not a contender, and that's okay. Yeah. But they are a team that I think is poised to really make noise. And the biggest thing for me is they haven't gone backwards from last year, which is a real danger with teams that make that jump. That's really promising so far.
So is Paolo consistent, not scoring at a 50-point level, but consistently scoring at a high level? Is that the benchmark for you to put them into a contender slot? Like, what do you think would be the markers as we continue on through the NBA season of a team where you say, okay, now we're ready to make that leap?
So, I mean, the good news for them is that their offense is actually functioning. Like, their offense actually looks like something that isn't hot garbage, which it was basically all of last year. They won only with defense. They're actually 12th right now in adjusted offensive rating at dunks and threes, which factors in strength of schedule. So that factors playing the Pacers. That's really promising. KCP can't hit water if he fell out of a boat right now, and they're still putting up really good numbers. So that, to me, is the most promising part, is that I trust the defense is going to be there. They got dogs on that team, but they're actually able, their offense looks way cleaner, way better, and way smarter. Jamal Mosley's doing great work there.
Yeah. And Anthony Black suddenly found a 3-point shot. Like, wait, where was he hiding that? I don't remember that on any scouting report about him coming out of college. Hayes, final word. Is there something that would put them over that line to contender for you, or do you see still some question marks, some weaknesses in this team that are keeping you from putting them over?
Yeah, I mean, other than just making sure they're going to be able to do this consistently offensively is one of the biggest things. But I think also, like, how much is Jalen Suggs' game really grown? Like, so far averaging 17 points per game. That's 5 more than what he did last year. Still has that same brand of defense. And while KCP hasn't been able to hit shots, if Jalen Suggs' offensive growth is going to maintain this entire season, that adds another layer of complexity for this Orlando Magic team to add to what they already do amazingly defensively.
All right, coming up, we saw a very different LeBron James in Phoenix. Was the Lakers' first loss more about LeBron, or was it more about the Suns' defense? We're going to play Gimme More coming up in the second segment. And later, the Knicks and Karl Anthony Towns have been an awkward fit so far. Is it something they can overcome? Matt Moore and Hayes will answer that coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time makes buying tickets to your next event easier. And I'm not just talking about sports. We talk a lot about sports on this show, but not just sports. Game Time has deals, great deals on concerts and all kinds of events. And with Game Time Picks, they gather up all the best deals and put them all into one place, which I absolutely love because it means less work for me and more savings for my family that I can spend on, going to other events. I love it. What I love even more is the all-in pricing feature where I toggle it on and it shows me all the total upfront price with no surprise fees at checkouts. I have enough surprises in my life. I have a toddler. She provides me with all the surprise I need in this entire world. I don't want it in my ticketing, and Game Time helps me with that. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKED ONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Get recaps on every game every day with Locked On NBA Game Time. If you subscribe to this feed, then you already have access to Game Time. If you're not subscribed on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, reach over and hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We had 12 games last night. It was a lot of NBA action, and a lot of them were close battles, but I don't know about you two. I'm greedy. I want more. So we're going to play Gimme More here in this second segment. I'm going to give Matt and Hayes a game, and they have to tell me if it's more about one thing or one team or another thing. Let's start with the Suns' victory over the Los Angeles Lakers 109-105, and let's go to Locked On Lakers with their biggest takeaway from LA's first loss of the season.
I think for him to be 3 of 14, he was 1 of 9 from inside the arc. I mean, he really was struggling to finish layups, to finish around the basket. He just seemed very out of sorts. He mentioned after the game not feeling well, and I don't know how much of what was going on was, he said that this began on Friday, not feeling well, which combined with the way he played in the fourth quarter in Saturday's win over the Kings, where he was downright brilliant, you wonder how much that took out of him.
Okay, I didn't mean to make you play fill in the blank there. I should have set that up a little bit better. They were talking about LeBron James having an off night for the Lakers. Hayes, was this more about LeBron's performance, his off night, or was it more about something with the Phoenix Suns, who are displaying a pretty stifling, or displayed in that game, pretty stifling defense?
I still think this is more about LeBron having an off night. Like when JJ Redick is screaming, shoot the effing ball on the sideline, I think that shows how important it is for LeBron to be able to shoot. Like despite what AD's doing this season, which has been amazing, MVP level, everything, these periods of times that we have in the game where LeBron has these short, dominant stretches where he's just doing everything, passing-wise, scoring, everything, it's still important to the Lakers being able to win basketball games. So I still think that this is more about LeBron having an off night. And if he's dealing with illness, I hope he gets better sooner rather than later. But to see what LeBron's still doing at 39 years old, it's special. And so when you have that, you have nobody else that can replicate that, not even AD with how he's playing. So to me, it's more about LeBron having an off night.
Matt, are you going to stick up for the Suns?
I'll stick up a little bit just by saying that, like, look, if you look at the plus minus stuff, it's very clear where the Phoenix Suns won this game. It's on the bench. Like the Lakers' depth is not great. It's still not great. And so Phoenix was able to hit them with a lot of different guys that were able to play and have significant impact on this game. Mason Plumlee was a plus 23 in 24 minutes. That happens off the bench, you're in trouble. Like that's a real problem when you got bench guys going plus 23, Royce O'Neal plus 25. The Lakers killed in the starter minutes. Yusuf Nurkic was minus 20. Single game plus minus is noisy for sure, but we have like a clear map here. And what this does tell me is Phoenix doesn't have to dominate in the starter minutes to get a win versus a very good team. That's really promising for Phoenix. The other thing I would say is, I'm sure LeBron's not feeling great. There's lots of crud going around. It happens. He is human, but also that wouldn't have bothered him 10 years ago. Man's 40. Man's 40.
Yeah.
I'm 42. I know. I don't bounce back the same way. It does not happen. So,
listen, 35 years old. After I turned 35, yep. I used to never get sick. I get sick every time my son walks in the house and just sneezes into the atmosphere. I know I'm going to get sick. So
yeah, exactly.
I feel like we're going to be having the age discussion with LeBron a lot on this show. I feel like every time we mention Father Time, $1 should have to go into a comfortable pair of penny loafers. Yeah. I don't know, but it seems like this is not the last time that we are going to talk about that. Let's go to another game, another close game between the Chicago Bulls and the Memphis Grizzlies. And we're going to hear from both sides of this matchup, from Joe Mullinax first, from Locked On Grizzlies, and then we'll hear the team from Locked On Bulls, Hayes and Big Kev.
Jenkins was very mad at his team's defensive efforts in this contest. And don't get me wrong, I would be mad too. But I hope that Taylor Jenkins is able to go home and look at himself in the mirror and ask himself, are we being overly cautious with the likes of Jaren Jackson Jr.?
Zach LaVine with 30 points today. He also chips in 4 assists, 3 rebounds. Kobe White with 20 points on an efficient 6 of 15 shooting, 5 assists in this game. Nikola Vucevic, the most consistent Bull so far this season, 22 points, 4 of 8 from three-point range. How do you feel about this core 3, how it's performing?
I already knew that Zach LaVine was going to play at this level. He doesn't have to be second banana to DeRozan anymore. I knew he was going to be able to at least score the ball. With this big 3, the Chicago Bulls are going to be a team that wins games that you don't expect them to win.
Okay, so the Memphis defense giving up 126 points to the Chicago Bulls. They win by 3, 126-123. Matt, was this more about Chicago's core 3 finally coming together, or is it about Memphis being too careful with Triple J's return.
First off, I love that take about DeRozan because that's been standout for me is that like, oh, hey, DeRozan's gone. Zach LaVine looks like an all-NBA point guard again. Funny. That's weird because he was one before DeRozan showed up. Now he's one again. However, big thing here. Everyone talking about Jaren Jackson Jr. because of the plus minus. He was dominant in his minutes. Ja didn't play. The game doesn't count. Throwing it out. Ja didn't play. Doesn't count. That's all the difference was in this game. No, look, I think Chicago's pesky. I think that Memphis is still experimenting with stuff. Look how many guys they played. Like they're playing like a 12-man rotation right now because Jenkins is still figuring stuff out. I'm not worried about Jaren. They should be cautious on that side to make sure he doesn't have injuries. We can't have another Memphis season marred by them being out every other game. Ja didn't play. Good win for the Bulls. The Grizzlies still should have executed better to win that game. But I think this is more just about Ja didn't play. Pesky matchup. Bulls are a little bit better than we thought.
Yeah, Bulls are definitely better, I think, than even what I thought coming into the season. And the thing that's making a big difference for the Bulls is in any game that they've won so far this season is how well are they hitting their threes. They're at the top towards the top 5 of the league as far as three-point percentage, top 10 in the league in three-point attempts per game, top 10 in the league in three-point makes per game. Like right now, they're living and dying by the three-point, and that's so different than what the Chicago Bulls team has done in prior years. You even got Josh Giddey shooting 46% from three right now. It's not sustainable. I don't think it's sustainable. If it is, watch out a little bit in the Eastern Conference, I guess, for your playing scenario. But I think ultimately, like, yeah, not playing JJJ down the stretch, you want to be cautious with him. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. We're 4 games into the season. You don't want to risk anything that's going to potentially take him off the board later in the season. So, I got to admit that it's more about JJJ not being out there, but also the Bulls are just, I think they're surprising teams with how good they can be offensively some nights.
If Zach LaVine can keep up some measure of this performance, 30 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists on 22 shots, is it more likely that he becomes, like, we revive the trade talks for Zach LaVine, or is it more likely that the Bulls are able to overperform their expectations this season, Matt?
The pick being top 6 protected is tough. That's a tough situation. Top 10, sorry. That's tough for them. You don't want to risk it, right? And you have to kind of decide on the future of the franchise, but also when you have a front office that's been under a lot of heat and they have an opportunity to win games for an ownership group that typically likes playoff revenue, that's going to be very tempting. Like, these are the type of things that you should think about, not just like, oh, they should definitely do this because it's better for the team. That's funny. But like, what's better for the people that are actually making these decisions? That I think is going to be a tough one. I also think, look, if he keeps this up and the Lakers keep having problems with depth and or feel like they can make an upgrade, you're just going to hear the chirp, chirp, chirp of Clutch once again talking about Zach LaVine being a Laker at the deadline.
Hayes, what's the pulse of the fan base right now? I mean, you've got it. Do they want this performance to continue because it could make him a better trade target, or do they want to see this core 3 come together and get something out of what Chicago has put together here?
The two very good questions, and the answer to both those is yes, because the fan base is so split on this. But I think ultimately, like, the louder voice of the fan base is the fact that 2 of the pieces that are the stalwarts on this team, Nikola Vucevic and Zach LaVine, are having 2 of their best seasons. Vuce is best season as a Bull to start off so far, and Zach is best season in a few years. So I do think that there's a bigger kind of outlook on, okay, now if we can move these guys by the trade deadline, does that also help us keep our top 10 pick? And we're getting more assets back, because at one point we would have had to give up a first-round pick to move Zach LaVine. So I still think I'm leaning more towards they'll probably still look to move Zach, because even AK was non-committal on Zach at our GM at Media Day. So I still think that's probably the way they're going to lead.
All right, coming up, the Knicks are off to a 1-2 start. Not exactly what they were expecting when they traded for Karl Anthony Towns. We'll talk about his fit in New York, and we'll hear from the Locked On Knicks podcast next on Locked On NBA. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. There is a free daily Locked On podcast for your favorite NBA team. Just search your favorite podcast app or search YouTube for Locked On and the name of your favorite team today. The Knicks made one of the biggest acquisitions in the offseason in Karl Anthony Towns, but it hasn't immediately translated to wins as they dropped their second of 3 games last night. Let's check in with Locked On Knicks host Gavin Shaw on Cat's start in New York.
After this game is like, if the Knicks don't make the Cat trade, I think they win this game with Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. It still feels like we are running an offense that is designed to in large part, like play off your stars, creating everything, right? Like Jalen Brunson drawing double teams, getting it to Mikal Bridges, letting him kick it out, letting him score the basketball. And you're hoping you can do the same thing with Karl Anthony Towns, because that's when the Knicks offense has flowed best since acquiring Jalen Brunson, is having two guys who can generate offense on their own, generate double teams. That is not really who Towns has been throughout his career. He's been arguably a top 10 to 15 offensive player in the league for the bulk of his career, but mostly on the strength of like what he does off ball and what he does attacking closeouts and hitting threes. And the Knicks just need more from this guy to get to where they want to get to. They need superstar offense to make up for what you lose on defense with him playing center. And what we saw tonight was far from that.
Oh, no, we're not already talking about rehoming the Bodega Cat, are we? I mean, this is crazy. We're only 3 games in, but Matt, the question is yours. Is Karl Anthony Towns a bad fit in New York, or is there something missing in how the Knicks and Tom Thibodeau specifically are using him?
Okay, don't tell the Knicks fans. Okay, don't tell the Knicks fans. They overperformed last year and weren't that good. Like that's this. They don't win that game with Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. Dante might have made it closer. This looks like a close game. You look at the advanced box score based off of the possessions, and this was a solid Cavs win. The Cavs are a monster. That should be the takeaway from this, is the Cavs look awesome. But that Knicks offense, yeah, like it's going to be a little bit ragged. They're still integrating new pieces. They're still working on these things. Their best chance, because of the path that they've chosen, is getting Cat involved. They're not going to rehome Cat. They're not going to find a shelter for Kitty Cat. Like, that's not going to happen. It is bad that they're already suggesting this when you haven't even got to the part where teammates are rolling their eyes at him yet. You haven't even reached that point yet. And look, I think Towns has made a lot of strides, and I've always said this. I think Towns wants to be great. I think he's always trying to figure out how to be great. And I think New York might afford him that opportunity. It's 3 games versus a tough schedule. This is honestly fine. This is okay. This is an okay start. No need to overreact. But Knicks fans also probably got to taper down those expectations that they have with all these big-time trades again.
Yeah, the fact that we're here already, like Knicks fans just got to learn to be patient. You guys sucked for almost 20 years. Just chill out a little bit. Just chill out. It's going to take some time. And I agree with Matt in the sense that like Jalen Brunson had to finish that season, probably the last 2 months playing at almost MVP level every single game just about. And so was there a little bit of overachievement for the Knicks a little bit last year? Definitely, possibly. That's what Tom Thibodeau teams have typically done anyway, because of the way that he just grinds it out as a coach. So I think practice some patience with Karl Anthony Towns. Let's not look to rehome the Cat already. Like, it's going to take some time. You have a new team. You already added another pieces in Mikal Bridges. You added Karl Anthony Towns to this team. It's going to take some time. Be patient. Let's see where we are at the end of December before we start panicking about whether Karl Anthony Towns is a fit or not. Just chill out.
And listen, I know it's not great to like look at team offense, defense numbers this early in the season. But in this case, the Knicks offense is 3rd in the NBA according to Cleaning the Glass in points per possession. They're 29th in defense. And so, yes, I understand that like Cat hasn't been great offensively, but I don't know that he alone is responsible for 29th in defense. What else could be going on there? And does it all fall on Cat's shoulders, Matt?
Well, again, I just want to point this out. So, like, dunks and threes, great site, does schedule adjusted. They're 14th in defense there. And the reason is because they played the Boston Celtics, which are an absolute fire hurricane. So, like, that's going to nuke all of your numbers in a 3-game sample. Look at the offenses they played. They played Boston, Indiana, pretty good, and Cleveland, pretty good. So, like, yeah, their defense is going to look worse because they face one of the toughest schedules. Now, I don't think their performance has been what you expected last year, going back to like, yeah, that's the thing is last year you guys were all heart, grit, grind, and then you traded everyone to get Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns, and now you're a different team. And that's fine, but they'll probably stabilize there. Tibbs is a good enough coach to probably coach them up over the course of the season. And the offense, like you mentioned, Doug, hasn't been a problem. So this was a one-case scenario of the offense not living up to the billing versus, again, an elite team, I think, in Cleveland.
So the message that I'm hearing from both of you is calm down, relax, which I'm sure will be taken in the spirit in which it was given amongst New York fans. We'll see. If you have a comment, drop it on the YouTube channel.
For the New York fans, I got it in a way that you guys will completely understand it. You're bugging, yo. That's it. There you go.
All right. You're bugging.
You're bugging.
Okay. So we talked a lot about so many games last night, so many close games. I want to go to a moment, though, in last night's action that seemed to captivate NBA fans, and it was another Payton Pritchard buzzer-beating three. This guy is like the king of buzzer-beating threes at the end of quarters, and it had Bucks coach Doc Rivers reacting pretty vehemently to it. Here's John Corrales with the breakdown on that moment.
Left, Doc Rivers on the sideline. Hands on his knees. Pritchard gets the ball. Now, Doc says after the game, we wanted to force him to the middle, but Pritchard, 2 crossover dribbles, gets to the right. And Doc says, I knew as soon as he got to the right, something bad was going to happen. And from the Celtics perspective, something good was going to happen. Pritchard gets down to his spot, little step back, fires the 3, drills it. Doc's head dropped. Boom. I mean, you couldn't tell what he was saying or thinking. But in that moment, you're like, I'm sure he was like, not again with this guy.
Okay, not again. The Payton Pritchard 3 to end the third quarter. I want to play a little game of who are you in this video? Matt, are you Payton Pritchard celebrating Boston's three-point shooting depth and general dominance? Because this came at the end of a run that seemingly put Milwaukee's chances at this game to sleep. Or are you Drew Holiday begging the ref to call a push-off on Payton Pritchard? Or are you Doc Rivers, hands on your knees, exasperated at what you're watching?
I'm absolutely Doc Rivers. I got to be Doc Rivers here because someone figure out a way to attack Payton Pritchard defensively. And I know it's hard. I know the Celtics defensive scheme is really tough. And I know that Payton Pritchard gives a high level of effort to compensate. If you cannot target him, if you do not get out of your normal game flow script and actually work to take him out and make him unplayable, you have no shot of beating Boston because he's going to be a plus. And if the starters are all plus because they're better than you and the bench is plus because you don't target Payton Pritchard, it's trouble. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that Payton Pritchard is like Trae Young, but I am saying that you need to work harder to go at Payton Pritchard and get him off the floor. The way that teams fail to account for Pritchard, Doc Rivers talked about this, about him being on the scouting report, is absolutely exasperating. If only there was some sort of person whose job it is to communicate that to the players. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the word. Like a coach. That's what I'm thinking of here.
All right, Hayes, who are you? Are you Pritchard, are you Holiday, or are you Rivers?
I'm Pritchard because everything that causes Doc Rivers pain brings great joy to me. Everything. So I am Payton Pritchard, and I'm smiling. I'm looking dead at Doc Rivers and smiling the whole way walking into the tunnel. Because, hey, I mean, I say hate is a strong word, but I appreciate Doc Rivers failing. As a Chicagoan to a Chicagoan, Doc Rivers failing, it brings me great joy.
I did not play this portion of the Locked On Celtics podcast with host John Corrales, but he wasn't all the way bought in on some talk around the Celtics fandom about Payton Pritchard for sixth man. Can I interest either of you on some stock for Payton Pritchard, sixth man?
Yeah, he's gotten steamed into oblivion at FanDuel. Like his number has dropped a huge amount. And I honestly think it's probably a pretty good number here because if Boston is so dominant, teams are just kind of rattled by them. And if there's going to be enough garbage time in all these games because Boston looks so dominant, at least to start the year, that means Pritchard's going to get minutes and he's definitely going to get shots. And until teams prove that they can actually do something about it, I do think there's probably some value here that Payton's going to wind up with a statistical profile and like win profile of the guys that have won this award.
Hayes.
I buy it. I'm buying all the stock in it because I think that there's a great chance of this. And Payton Pritchard's role on the team that he's on, his ability to hit big shots. Yeah, I'm buying stock in it.
Dominant teams win awards. We'll see. All right. If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. Thanks so much for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Enjoy tonight's action. Be kind to each other. And we will see you right back here on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On NBA podcast.